All right, so what I have here is a 2002 GTX DI. I am trying to get this thing running for someone else. It's not mine. I don't have the full history of this, but I do know that a rebuilt engine was installed 2 years ago. Now I have other videos on my channel about troubleshooting DIs and trying to get them running. I'm going to do a lot of those same tests. I'm not going to go into too great a detail. But the difference here is normally I'm starting with a basket case and I completely rebuild the engine, so I know I have a fresh engine. And also I'm not going to just, I normally just don't throw parts at it. This is someone else's ski. So I want to make sure that I'm just fixing what's broke. So as you know, if you have a DI, these can be a little tricky. So this video is intended to really show you diagnostic steps and not really dwell on how to fix things. We'll just cover that quickly because I think it's important to really figure out what's going on. And I'm going to do this video in 3 parts, trying to keep each part brief, and that way you may not be interested in all parts, but I'm going to break it down into the first part. I always start with checking the air and fuel pressures and the fuel rail system, then the top end, and then finally the bottom end. All right, so for the first portion of testing, we're going to always start with the air system because I've pointed this out in other videos, but your fuel pressure will be influenced by your air pressure. Very important because people tend to just replace fuel pumps on these. So if air pressure is low, your fuel pressure will be low, and that is because the air pressure regulator is tied to the fuel pressure regulator, and the fuel pressure regulator senses air pressure and will maintain fuel pressure at 27 psi above air pressure. So if air is low, fuel will be low. So I always want to start with the air system. If this was a completely rebuilt engine, they should have rebuilt the compressor. But what I start with is hooking up my T-fitting into the air system. I've shown you this on other videos, and I do have the my ad linked where I offer this fitting. And if you've seen any of that, you know this goes into the fuel rail in place of the air supply line, like that. You put the clamp on it, the factory clamp, and then this will go in here like that, and what you'll end up with is a pressure gauge teed in to your air system. So that's the first thing we do, and I'm going to show you that test and show you that we basically had nothing in the way of air pressure. All right, so as you could see, we had no pressure, just some little fluctuations. So you have to look for a leak. And that's got to be a pretty severe leak. So you can do soap bubble checks, but you have to have pressure. So you'd have to be cranking while you're doing that. So a very simple thing I can do with this fitting is to take the hose that's teed in and hook this to compressed air. And obviously that's going to pressurize the system into the fuel rail, back into the pump, and that should hold pressure. It's also going to pressurize your regulator. So this is also a good way you can test your air regulator. So what I recommend is to start with a low pressure, like 10 psi, and use your compressor regulator valve and just crank that pressure up slowly. Listen for any leaks. You can do your soap bubble test. But when I did it, it wasn't too long before I could hear a loud hissing, and we never got up to 80 psi. And I could wiggle this line, and it was pretty clear that this original factory O-ring was dry rotted and not sealing. So these things, the red ones are 20 years old, and that thing was took a compression set and obviously not sealing. So all we had to do was replace that with a new O-ring, and I'm going to show you the results of that. And for a part that's, pennies, I think we got this portion of the system fixed. Now, one thing about O-rings, you should use nitrile or Viton in and around gasoline systems. The red is Viton, so that would be the factory O-rings. Now you got to watch the black ones. Normally are nitrile, but they could be butyl rubber. Butyl rubber is not good for gasoline. Those are going to be your cheapest hardware store O-rings. So you might want to order those online. So let me show you the test after we replaced that O-ring. We held pressure, and what we can also do, like I said, while you're connected up to the compressor, run that pressure up above 80, and the air pressure regulator should lift off at 80 and hold you steady at 80. You also hear the pressure being relieved from that relief valve.